"What do you mean the foreman won't wear a hard hat?" Curtis Jackson asked, pausing mid-step in his office. His assistant, a wiry man in his 30s named Leo, shifted uncomfortably. "That's what someone reported. Said he told a new guy to toss the vest and stop whining like a kid." The guy walked off the job. Curtis stared out the window. 5 construction sites, all inherited from his father's legacy. His dad built the company with sweat and steel, but Curtis had spent the last few years behind conference tables, not scaffolding. The 5th Street site had been falling behind schedule, and this was the 3rd complaint in 2 weeks. Late permits, missing equipment, workers quitting mid-shift. But the safety gear issue, that was a line. "I've had enough of hearing secondhand stories," Curtis said. "Get me a fake resume and a new name. I'm going in." Leo blinked. "You're going undercover? You think I'm going to fix this from a desk?" They didn't recognize him because no one at the 5th Street site had met him in person. It was a project his dad greenlit before passing, and management had changed hands twice. Curtis had never set foot near it. Within 3 days, he was Chris Jensen, a first-day laborer in a dusty hoodie, steel toe boots, and a $10 haircut. His beard was longer now, his voice rougher, and his posture stooped just enough to blend in. No clipboard, no watch. Just a beat-up thermos and a borrowed pair of gloves. When he arrived that morning, the site looked like chaos. A crane idled with no operator in sight. 2 guys argued over a missing pallet of bricks. No one greeted him. "You the new guy?" a man barked. He was broad, tan, and had a permanent squint from years in the sun. "I'm Dwayne, Foreman here. Grab a shovel and don't ask dumb questions." "Got it," Curtis said. "Do I need a—" "Don't start," Dwayne cut him off. "Hard hat's in the trailer, but I don't care if you wear it. Real men know how to dodge falling stuff." Curtis froze. Dwayne kept walking. "And lose the vest, just gets caught on nails." Curtis watched the others. A few had helmets, some didn't. No one said a word. He grabbed a shovel and joined a younger guy hauling dirt into wheelbarrows. The kid looked barely 20. "I'm Chris," Curtis said. "Name's Luca. You new?" "Yeah. You guys always work without gear?" Luca scoffed. "Dwayne hates rules, says it slows us down. Last week a guy took a bolt to the shoulder. Dwayne told him to ice it with a soda can." Curtis clenched his jaw. "Why do people stay?" "Some don't. The rest need the paycheck." By noon, Curtis had seen enough. Workers balancing on scaffolding without harnesses. A guy welding near flammable material. No one inspecting anything. And Dwayne? He barked orders, mocked anyone who asked questions, and disappeared for 45 minutes during lunch. But it wasn't all bad. There was a woman named Carla, maybe in her 40s, running circles around the crew. She double-checked every measurement, patched up a mistake before it became a disaster, and quietly picked up the slack. "You're doing double the work," Curtis said. Carla shrugged. "If I don't, someone gets hurt. Dwayne doesn't check anything." "You ever say something?" She laughed bitterly. "And lose my job? I'm a single mom. I just keep my head down and try not to get anyone killed." That hit Curtis harder than he expected. By late afternoon, a stack of bricks shifted and nearly crushed a worker's foot. Dwayne blamed the guy for stacking it wrong, even though he hadn't touched it. Curtis helped the guy up, then turned to Carla. "How long's this been going on?" "Months," she said. "But no one listens." Curtis looked at the mess, the fear in people's eyes, and the silence that followed every mistake. He'd inherited a company, but right now, he felt like he'd inherited a mess, and tomorrow he planned to push Dwayne a little further. The following morning, Curtis arrived before sunrise. The site was still dark, lit only by the dull orange glow of the street lamps. Cold air bit through his jacket, but he welcomed it. The discomfort grounded him, reminded him why he was here. He walked past a stack of warped plywood leaning against a fence, then crouched near the generator to check the fuel gauge. Empty. No tags, no maintenance log. He made a mental note. When the others began trickling in, Curtis noticed how few greeted each other. No banter, no morning laughter, just stiff nods and quiet yawns. Everyone scattered to their tasks without direction. Dwayne hadn't shown up yet. Luca passed by, rolling a wheelbarrow full of discarded rebar. "Who sets the assignments?" Curtis asked. "Dwayne usually scribbles stuff on a scrap of drywall and sticks it on the trailer door," Luca replied. If he shows up on time? Does anyone know what the schedule is? Nope, just hope you're not stuck with the concrete mixer. It's busted again. The crew kept moving like pieces on a broken chessboard, no strategy, just reaction. Curtis joined a group hauling insulation panels, their jackets coated in dust from yesterday's winds. Each panel was heavier than it looked, and the men carried them in silence, clearly used to working blind. As they dropped the panels near the framing area, a new voice cut through the morning. "You're stacking that crooked, genius." Dwayne had arrived. He was wearing the same frayed jeans and scuffed boots, but today he had a cigarette tucked behind his ear and grease on his hands. He didn't acknowledge anyone beyond tossing a glance toward the trailer. "Tasks are up," he muttered, then turned toward a delivery truck pulling in. Curtis went to the trailer. A piece of drywall leaned against the door. Scribbled with names and tasks in barely legible handwriting, his name Chris was next to roof support cleanup. He crossed paths with Carla near the utility shed. "Did he assign you anything today?" he asked. "I'm on the electrical prep." She adjusted her tool belt. "Which makes no sense. I'm not certified for that, and we don't even have the conduit on site." Curtis frowned. "What do you do when things don't match up? Fix it myself, or improvise, or wait for someone to yell?" He watched her walk off toward the half-frame structure, then turned to his own task. The roof support area was a mess of snapped 2x4s, bent nails, and soda cans. He picked through it slowly, checking for salvageable timber. Behind him, a loud argument erupted. He turned to see Dwayne yelling at a tall man with a limp. Curtis recognized him from yesterday, one of the few who wore safety gloves. "I told you to carry that alone," Dwayne barked. "It's a two-man lift," the man said calmly. "I already tweaked my back last week, not doing it again." "You think I care about your back? You're slower than everyone else. Either move or leave." Curtis stepped closer. The man didn't flinch, but his jaw tightened. "I've been doing this work for 20 years. I know when something's unsafe." "Then maybe this isn't the site for you," Dwayne snapped, jerking his thumb toward the gate. "Go find one with padded mats." The man dropped his gloves and walked off without a word. Curtis turned to a nearby worker. "Who was that?" "Jonas. Good guy. Has a busted knee from another job. Works twice as hard as most people here." Curtis felt his chest tighten. "And no one's going to stop that?" The worker just shrugged and returned to hammering. By mid-morning, Curtis had cleared most of the roof debris. The dumpster was nearly full, and the site radio crackled static from a corner near the tool trailer. He decided to find Carla. If she was being pushed into electrical prep without certification, that was a liability waiting to happen. He found her crouched near the main breaker box, squinting at a tangle of wires. "This isn't even grounded properly," she muttered. Curtis knelt beside her. "You sure you should be doing this?" "I flagged it twice last week. No one answered. Then Dwayne told me to sort it out or stop wasting time." "Do we even have an electrician?" "We did. He left after Dwayne told him to stop whining about code." Curtis didn't respond. He just stared at the wires, then stood and walked toward the trailer. Inside, the air was stale. Papers were scattered across a folding table, and a half-eaten sandwich sat next to a cracked laptop. Curtis flipped through the papers. Invoices, time cards, delivery receipts, all chaotic. A folder labeled Compliance caught his eye. He opened it. Empty. Outside, raised voices drew his attention again. He stepped out and saw Dwayne pacing toward the framing crew. "You idiots measured this wrong," Dwayne said, pointing at the beam they had just installed. "It's off by 2 inches. Curtis stepped closer. One of the crew members, a woman in her late 20s, responded carefully. "We followed the markings from yesterday. They were already on the frame." "Then you measured wrong yesterday," Dwayne snarled. "Tear it down." "That's half a day of work," she said. "Then maybe next time you won't screw around." Curtis had seen enough. He walked toward Dwayne, who was lighting a cigarette and muttering under his breath. "You've been berating people all morning," Curtis said, "and you just pushed out a guy with an injury." Dwayne looked up. "You a foreman now, rookie?" "I'm someone who sees what's happening here." Dwayne stepped forward. "You don't like it? Leave." Curtis kept his voice steady. "You're assigning people to jobs they aren't certified for, ignoring safety, and you've got workers quitting mid-shift. That's not leadership. That's negligence." Dwayne laughed. You think you're the first guy to complain? This site's behind schedule. We don't have the luxury of hand-holding. You're the reason it's behind. The cigarette fell from Dwayne's mouth. Curtis continued. You've lost crew members, ignored inspections, and created a toxic site. I've seen it. I've documented it. Dwayne's eyes narrowed. Who the hell do you think you are? Curtis stepped back and raised his voice loud enough for the crew to hear. I'm Curtis Jackson. Silence. Carla froze mid-step. Luca dropped a wrench. Workers turned slowly, eyes wide. Dwayne's expression twisted. You're lying. Curtis pulled out his ID and held it up. I own this company, and I've been watching you fail every standard we stand for. No one moved. Curtis turned toward the crew. You've all been working under unsafe, disorganized conditions. That ends today. Dwayne's voice was low. You can't just walk in here and... You're done, Curtis said. Clean out your things. You're off this site effective immediately. Dwayne stood frozen for a moment, then turned and stormed off toward the parking lot without another word. Curtis looked at the workers. We shut down at noon. I need every crew member in the trailer in 30 minutes. We're going to talk about what's broken and how we fix it. No one cheered, no one clapped, but heads began to lift, shoulders straightened. For the first time since he arrived, Curtis saw something shift in their eyes. Hope. And he knew this was only the beginning. By the time Curtis stepped into the trailer, the air inside was stale and tense. The crew gathered slowly, some leaning against the walls, others perched on overturned buckets or standing with arms crossed. No one spoke. Curtis stood near the makeshift table, hands resting flat on the battered surface. He looked around the room, meeting eyes. Carla stood near the back, her brow furrowed. Luca hovered near the door, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Jonas, the worker with the limp who had walked off earlier, was absent. Curtis made a mental note to reach out to him separately. I'm not here to hand out speeches, Curtis said. I came here because I needed the truth, and I got it. No one interrupted. This site's been run without structure, without safety, and without respect. That ends today. But to fix it, I need to know everything, not just what I saw. A man near the corner, tall with a buzz cut and stained work gloves, raised his hand slightly. Curtis nodded. My name's Ray, the man said. I've been here for about 6 weeks. First day I showed up, Dwayne told me to lift a load of pipe solo. I said I needed help. He threw a wrench across the floor and said I could go back to the unemployment line if I didn't man up. Curtis kept his expression neutral. Did you report it? Ray shook his head slowly. Didn't know who to tell. No site contact list. No HR number. Just him. Curtis looked toward a younger woman seated near the back. She wore a high-vis jacket and had black smudges across her sleeves. I'm Tanya, she said before he could ask. I was hired through a subcontractor. Never met anyone from your corporate office. I've been covering framing and cleanup, but half the time, I can't get the tools I need. If I ask, I get told to make do or move out of the way. Curtis turned to the man beside her, a solidly built worker with a weathered face. Name's Eric, the man said. I've been doing concrete for 20 years. Been on sites like this, but never one where the radio's always dead and no one checks deliveries. We had a truck show up 2 weeks back with damaged mix. Dwayne said to just pour it and forget it. Curtis didn't respond right away. He paced once around the table, then stopped near the window, staring out at the cluttered site. I'm not going to ask you to trust me overnight, he said, but I'm going to earn it, starting now. He turned back toward them. Site's shutting down for the rest of the day. Full safety inspection coming in tomorrow morning. No one works until we're cleared. Anyone who wants to stay on will get paid for today. Anyone who doesn't can walk now, no hard feelings. A few exchanged looks, no one moved. I'll be bringing in a new site supervisor by next week, someone with actual experience and accountability. Until then, I'll be here every day. You see something wrong, you bring it straight to me. Luca raised his hand. What about Jonas? He's not fired, Curtis said. He's recovering. I'll call him tonight. If he wants to come back, there's a spot for him. Carla stepped forward. And the equipment? Half our gear's either missing or busted. Curtis nodded. Inventory starts tomorrow. Anything that doesn't meet standards gets replaced. And from now on, every crew gets a copy of reporting procedures. No more guessing who to talk to. Ray leaned forward slightly. You're really staying on site? I'll be here before the gates open. You'll see me work next to you. The room stayed quiet for a moment longer, then slowly conversations began to hum. Curtis didn't smile, didn't declare victory. He just gathered the scattered papers on the table, stuffed them into a folder, and stepped outside. The next morning, the temperature dropped 5 degrees. Curtis arrived an hour before anyone else. He walked the perimeter, noting the open fencing on the west side, the untagged propane tanks near the shed, and the caved plywood stack near the dumpster. He took photos and sent them directly to Leo with a list of corrections due before noon. By the time the first crew members arrived, a temporary safety officer had pulled in beside the site trailer. She wore a red vest with company credentials clipped to her collar. Her name was Delia, and she wasted no time. You've got 3 non-compliant ladders, she told Curtis before her second cup of coffee. One's missing a locking mechanism, the others are rusted out. Replace them, Curtis said. Today. She moved on without ceremony. That's what he liked. Inside the trailer, he set up a whiteboard and wrote one phrase at the top. Report it or repeat it. By mid-morning, Tanya flagged him down near the northeast corner. You asked us to speak up, she said. So I am. We've got a guy on the framing team who hasn't touched a tool all morning. Keeps walking off behind the portables and coming back smelling like weed. I don't know his name. Curtis followed her toward the back lot. A man in his early 30s leaned against the fence, scrolling through his phone. His vest was unzipped and his boots were untied. Curtis approached. You on break? The man looked up. 5 minutes. You've been back here 3 times in 2 hours. What's your assignment? Framing. Who gave it to you? One of the others. Can't remember. Curtis nodded once. You're done here. Step off site. What? You're not working. You're compromising site safety. We've got no time for that. Come on, man. I was just... Now? The man opened his mouth again, then saw Delia approaching with a clipboard and turned toward the gate without another word. Curtis turned back to Tanya. Thank you for reporting it. Keep holding the line. Later that day, Curtis found Carla near the break area, adjusting the wiring schematic on a clipboard. I've got someone certified coming in to handle the electrical, he said. You're off that task. Carla didn't look up right away. Appreciate that. I also reviewed the hours you've logged. You've been working 6 days a week, straight through lunch most days. She finally looked up. Someone had to. I'm assigning you to planning and oversight for now. You know the layout better than anyone. I want your eyes on every step. Her mouth opened slightly, surprised. That a promotion? You'll be compensated accordingly. She nodded slowly. Then I'm in. Curtis returned to the trailer and found Ray waiting at the door. You said to come to you directly, Ray said. We've got a guy named Malcolm, older guy, real quiet. I think he's been sleeping in his truck. Saw him brushing his teeth with a water bottle this morning. Curtis nodded. Where is he now? Ray pointed toward the lot. Curtis found Malcolm sitting on the tailgate of a rusted pickup, staring down at his hands. Mind if I sit? Curtis asked. Malcolm shook his head. You've been sleeping out here? Just for a few days. Got evicted last week. Waiting on my VA check. You served? Malcolm nodded once. 4 years infantry. Curtis stood. You're not working tonight. I'll cover a motel for the week. We'll talk tomorrow about long-term help. Malcolm didn't respond right away. Then he stood slowly and extended a hand. Curtis took it. As the sun dipped below the skyline, the site began to quiet. The safety officer had sent her preliminary notes. The fencing was repaired. The damaged ladders were tagged for disposal. The replacement tools were scheduled for delivery by morning. Curtis sat alone in the trailer as the last crew member clocked out. He rubbed the tension from his neck, then opened a blank notepad. At the top, he wrote, Lessons from the ground. Beneath it, he listed 3 lines. Structure without empathy fails. Safety must be non-negotiable. Leadership happens out front, not above. He closed the pad and locked the trailer. Tomorrow would be harder. But for the first time in weeks, the team had something they hadn't before. A leader who was watching. By the start of the new week, the 5th Street site looked different subtly, but unmistakably. The old piles of trash had been cleared, the broken fencing replaced with fresh panels, and the missing hazard signage finally posted. Most of the changes weren't flashy, but they mattered. Curtis had made sure of that. He stood near the gate just after dawn, clipboard in hand, watching each worker check in. Carla was already walking the perimeter, taking notes on updated equipment placements. Ray was coordinating the concrete delivery with the supplier's driver, making sure the correct mix was offloaded this time, not like the questionable batch from before. Curtis waved Malcolm over as he arrived, freshly shaven, in clean coveralls they'd picked up from a supply store 3 days earlier. His posture had shifted, still quiet, still reserved, but with a steadiness that hadn't been there before. "You good sleeping at the motel?" Curtis asked. "Warm bed and no alarms going off in the middle of the night." "I'll take it," Malcolm said, lightly tapping the side of his boot to check the lacing. Curtis nodded once. "We'll keep covering it until the housing coordinator gets back to me. I've got someone lined up to help with the paperwork." Malcolm gave a short nod and headed toward the west side of the lot, where Tanya was already setting up a frame for the new temporary storage unit. Curtis followed behind, scanning the worksite as he moved, checking for gaps in the morning setup. Inside the trailer, Delia was finishing her final site safety report. She handed it over without fanfare. "Clean. Everything's up to code. Only real note is you're still short one certified boom lift operator. Not critical today, but something to solve soon." "I've got a call with a staffing agency at noon," Curtis replied. "Appreciate your time on this." "I'll be back next month for the unannounced follow-up," she said, packing her bag. "Let's hope I don't find you backsliding." "You won't." After she left, Curtis reviewed the updated personnel sheet. Headcount was still tight, but stable. There was enough coverage to keep the framing and foundation work progressing. He'd put all expansion on hold until the core team was fully trained and equipped. Outside, Carla flagged him down, holding a small piece of conduit. "You see this?" she said, holding it up. "It's part of the batch we got from the supplier yesterday. I checked the specs thinner than what's rated for this site." Curtis took it from her, feeling the weight in his hand. "You sure?" "Positive. I called the manufacturer's number stamped on the side. These were cut for residential use, not commercial." Curtis didn't hesitate. "Pull every piece from that shipment. I'll call the supplier directly." Carla pulled a Sharpie from her pocket and began marking the stacks for removal, already halfway to the next row before Curtis had finished dialing. He didn't bother with pleasantries when the supplier picked up. "You sent us the wrong conduit. I want a replacement batch by tomorrow morning, and I want the delivery rep to walk it in and sign off personally." The voice on the other end grumbled something about mix-ups and paperwork. Curtis cut in. "I'm not interested in excuses. You're putting my crew at risk. Make it right, or I find another vendor." By late morning, the crew had shifted to alternate tasks, while the conduit issue was resolved. Tanya and Ray were working off new blueprints Curtis had approved alongside the structural engineer. Malcolm was organizing the tool trailer, cataloging items that needed replacement, while Carla was walking Luca through the updated voltage safety protocols. Curtis stepped out of the trailer and headed toward the southeast section, where an unfamiliar voice was rising above the others. As he got closer, he saw a man in his early 40s yelling at a younger worker, jabbing a finger in the kid's chest. "You think you're going to tell me how to wire? I was doing this before you were out of diapers. Don't give me that book crap." Curtis stepped in. "What's going on?" The older man turned, clearly annoyed. "This kid's trying to tell me how to run line. I've been doing this 25 years. Curtis looked at the younger worker, who stood stiffly, arms at his sides. "I told him he was using the wrong gauge wire. The panel's marked for 14, not 12. We've had 3 inspections fail this year because of mismatched installs." Curtis turned back to the older man. "What's your name?" "Frank? You're new, right? Just started this week." "Yeah." "I got sent over from the staffing agency." Curtis folded his arms. "Then, let's get something clear. We do things by code. Doesn't matter if you've been doing this 25 years or 25 minutes. You follow the standard. Disrespecting a crew member for doing the right thing is not how we operate." Frank's expression darkened. "I don't take orders from kids. And you won't take any more from me either. You're off the site." "You're joking." "I'm not." You raised your voice, ignored protocol, and tried to intimidate someone for correcting you on safety. That's non-negotiable. Pack your things." Frank muttered something under his breath, but didn't argue further. Curtis waited until he had cleared the gate before turning back to the younger worker. What's your name? Isaiah. You handled that exactly right. Keep speaking up. You're staying. Isaiah nodded, still rattled but holding his ground. Curtis returned to the trailer and made a note to flag the agency no more unvetted placements. If they couldn't send people willing to follow site standards, he'd end the contract. Later that afternoon, the replacement conduit arrived, personally delivered by the supplier's regional manager. Curtis made him walk every bundle past Carla, who inspected and signed off on each one. Only then did Curtis allow the team to resume prep. The rest of the day moved steadily. No surprises, no raised voices. Curtis kept moving, reviewing supply logs, checking rebar placement, confirming the crane schedule for the next lift. The pace was deliberate, controlled. As the sun began to drop, he gathered the team near the break area. Dust still hung in the air, and the scent of sawdust clung to every jacket. "I'm not going to keep you long," Curtis said, "but I want to say this. The way you've all responded in the last week, it matters. You didn't fold, you adapted. You called out problems. You fixed what needed fixing." He paused, making eye contact with each crew member as he spoke. "This site's no longer just about finishing a project. It's about doing it right, and that's because of you." Carla crossed her arms. "You're not going back to the office, are you?" Curtis shook his head. "Not yet. I'll stay until we're ahead of schedule and under budget without cutting corners." Luca raised a hand. "So, does this mean we get proper rain gear next time it pours? Because I'm still drying out from Thursday." Curtis grinned. "Already ordered." A few nods, a couple smiles. Not celebration, but acknowledgement. The kind that came from knowing things were finally moving in the right direction. As the crew dispersed, Curtis lingered by the gate, watching them head home. No one looked over their shoulder, no one shuffled. He locked up the trailer, then walked the site one last time, checking the fencing, confirming the tools were secured, and passing by the marked conduit stacks, now properly labeled and stored. He didn't need to say anything else. The work would speak for itself, and this time, it would speak the right language.